Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of E-Commerce Joe. In today's episode, I've got the pleasure of speaking with Richard Serunjogi, who is the founder and CEO of Business Score. Business Score is a platform which helps facilitate e-commerce businesses and connect them with lenders. So it helps facilitate funding for e-commerce businesses. If you're an e-commerce business and you're looking for funding, this episode will definitely be for you. I'd like to point out that Rich isn't a client and he's not sponsored this video. However, we do share some mutual clients and I'm going to be sharing this video with my clients because I do think it will be beneficial. In the video, we speak about what Business Score is. We also speak about how we can help e-commerce businesses. We speak about Richard's e-commerce journey and why he formed Business Score. And we also speak about how he himself had to get venture capital funding through a place called Combinator and the journey that he experienced. It's a really interesting discussion. I hope you enjoy it. I know I did. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. And if you've got any questions, please leave a comment below. One last note, if you're a client of ours and you want to be introduced to Rich, please let me know and I will introduce you to him directly. Thanks a lot. I hope you enjoy the video. Today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be speaking with Richard Serunjogi, who's the founder and CEO of Business Score, which is a platform that helps provide funding for e-commerce businesses. Richard, welcome to the show.
Brilliant to be here. Thanks for having me so much, Joe. And really excited to talk to you about the world of e-commerce and funding.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. So your business, your platform specializes in funding for e-commerce businesses. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so I guess like the principle of and I guess like our vision is to really make funding for e-commerce business owners fair. Because right now, you go to a lot of lenders and you get ripped off, so that's not fair. Secondly, we want it to be really fast. E-commerce business owners are often, trying to deal with clients from all over the world, often shipping things literally from their living room. So anything that can save them time is important. We want it to be fast. And then thirdly, we want it to be simple. There's so much jargon, typically when you try to go to a bank or most lenders, and most of them don't even really understand how e-commerce businesses work. They don't get the idea that you can maybe have, 0 sales in pounds or very few sales in pounds one month and actually have millions in dollars, and the next month it could flip around. And so we really want accessing funding to be simple for entrepreneurs who are selling products around the world online.
Nice. And the channel that I'm running at the moment is kind of focusing on the e-commerce industry as a whole, and you'll have some people who are established sellers, some that are kind of looking at getting started. The ones that are getting started might not have any idea what e-commerce funding or funding for e-commerce, or even just what funding in general means. If you were someone who's basic or like a newbie looking at this, how would you explain the idea of funding or what it is that the platform does?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say there's 3 types of funding available for a business. So the first one is grants. So that's basically money you don't have to pay back. The second group is debt or lenders. That could be like a credit card. It could be what we call revenue-based lender. That's really focused on e-commerce businesses, or it could be a standard bank loan. That's the second type, which you pay back. And then the third type you have is equity. So that's when an investor will give you some money in exchange for a portion of your business with the hope that the value of your business will increase in the future. So those are the 3 main types. But what you'd probably find, I guess, at the start of your business is typically, you put in your own money, a bit of your own time, and maybe even asking friends and family if they can maybe chip in and give you a little bit here and there. But one thing we do know, and I think one of the things we're trying to make funding fair is that not everyone necessarily has, friends or an uncle that can maybe, bail them out or to give them a check. And so what we're really trying to do is make it really transparent and give more entrepreneurs a level playing field to be able to access funding that they need.
Nice. I think that's quite an interesting one there that you said about asking friends to bail you out or lend you money. That is quite a typical source of funding that I see, and I'm sure you probably see as well. Are there many grants that are available for businesses? I know recently we've had the kind of business grants that come through because of coronavirus, but have there been many that have been available outside of that?
So it depends. So, for example, a lot of the grants are typically with organizations. So, for example, the Prince's Trust is a phenomenal organization that has different grants. So, if you're an entrepreneur that maybe has been out of work, they have some grants available. They also have some grants if you participate in some of their programs. So, what we typically find is the grants are either come from government or they come from like bigger organizations. There's also a lot of like regional based grants that have been set up. That are willing to maybe like give you a small grant, maybe a couple £1,000 for you to get going, and those typically focus on regions. We've actually now on the Business Score website have a list of all the grants available that we found for e-commerce businesses. So that's something that's a resource that we've created to help you kind of shift through, because it is actually there are a lot of grants out there and it is often not very clear which ones are applicable to e-commerce companies, which is your apply for. So we've tried to do it a little bit to make it a little bit more accessible.
Oh, cool. And for anyone watching, I'm going to link through to Rich's website, scorethebusiness.com, afterwards, so you'll be able to find any of those, the grants and any further information about his business. You say that, well, you specialize in working with e-commerce businesses. What makes your platform actually a specialist for e-commerce versus, I guess, a typical lender or some sort of broker?
Yeah, sure. So I think like the first thing, the reason why we're different to lenders is because we don't actually lend ourselves. So what we think is best position for us, at least now, is we want to give e-commerce businesses independent guidance around what their best options are and really simplify the process. So what we've got is partnerships with lots of different lenders, what you call a panel of lenders. And whenever we speak to e-commerce businesses that we're helping, we understand what their unique situation is, and then we basically put together a case on their behalf to the lenders that we work with. So we vouch for the e-commerce businesses. And I think how we're different from traditional brokers is that most brokers are focused on more traditional businesses that which is all good and well, maybe like the local taxi company or the local fish and chip shop that's trying to open up a new branch or a coffee chain. And so what we often find is that those brokers really struggle to understand why you don't necessarily have all your money in your UK bank account. They don't necessarily understand you might be a world first collecting your payments from Canada or from the United States. And so what we're able to do, and with our platform now, is allow you to connect the different sources of sales information. So whether that's your Shopify, your WooCommerce, or even Amazon. And what we're able to do then is create like a full picture and really make your case. Because typically what happens is, and it's such a headache, but many lenders, they literally just request your bank details, or brokers request your bank details. They don't see a lot of money in there, and then they basically write you off. They basically say, well, this can't be a company that's doing really well, because on their HSBC account, for you UK bound sterling, I can't see a lot of money going in. So often I literally find ourselves saying to lenders, wait a minute, we also need to get for these other accounts, which aren't the UK bank account, to show how well this business is doing. And because we act as like an independent intermediary, the lenders trust us. And also we've got relationships with the lenders, so that they understand us. And so when we tell them that you need to speak to this business, they take what we say quite seriously. And so I think, what we try to do is as much as possible is create a situation where we understand what the lenders want, and we also understand the reality of e-commerce businesses, so we can kind of connect the two and make the whole process a lot smoother.
Oh, wow. And how is it that you actually, I suppose, how is it that Score the Business or Business Score actually came into existence? Did you have e-commerce experience yourself, or did it just happen, to land on your lap? Like, what's the story behind it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like most great stories often comes through that you feel the pain yourself. So I had my own online business, and I used to sell cars and car parts from London, secondhand cars from London to East Africa, where my family roots are from. And like, if you ever want to know about like a cash flow struggle, that is the definition of a cash flow struggle. Because you could literally, I remember like buying a car like in London, say like around like January when everyone's depressed and everyone has no money, so get a good price. And then, it basically gets shipped out maybe in February. And then it'll take maybe like about a month or so for it to actually get there. So it'd be like March. Then it'd be in the compound, then there'd be lots of documents need to get signed. Then it'd be like April. And then the person who's going to buy the car kind of gives me half the money then. And what I'd find is almost like about an 8 to 9 month process to get my money back.
Yeah.
And I actually went to my local bank. I don't want to mention it there, but I actually went to my local bank here in the UK. And I was like, hey, look, I've got this great business model. Here are the margins. These businesses are paying, these people are paying so much for the cars. I've got my online store where they can just click and kind of request, kind of book them and pay for the money up front. It works amazingly. Can I get like a loan or something to do it? And they was like to me, well, we can't help with this. Where's your bank statement? And I was like, it's complicated because they don't pay in pounds, they pay in dollars because it's not like that. And I just hit a blank wall. And what was so frustrating is that a couple of years before, literally pretty much like, at the same time, a couple of years before, I'd spent time working in the city for McKinsey, the consulting firm, advising global executives at banks and helping them to prioritize. And so what I knew from kind of an executive level is that I really understood why these banks typically prioritize larger, more established offline businesses. It's because it's what they understand, it's what they know. And so they're not necessarily going to take, they don't necessarily have enough time or resources to then start trying to understand smaller, quirky businesses that are doing this online thing, which they don't really get. And so although I was really, 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 really annoyed when this happened when I went to my branch, I did empathize, I did understand. And then I thought to myself, actually, there must be a better way to improve this. There must be a better way for online business owners to be able to get the funds they need to then be able to, expand their businesses. And so that was kind of the genesis of Business Score. How can we help, business owners to be able to get the funds they deserve based on the merits of their business? If you're doing amazing in America, but your sales in London aren't great, you should still get funding to expand in America, And I think it's common sense, to be honest. And so far, we've had good reception from it. Managed to get ourselves some really great investors. But for me, the real proof in the pudding is are we able to help more and more and more e-commerce businesses to expand? So for me, that's the real long-term test for me. How many e-commerce businesses can we help to expand and get the funds they need to hit their goals?
Yeah, I saw on your website that it currently says you've worked with around 300, or over 300. We've got a couple of shared common clients who now we're working with. And as I said, I think your platform will be great for our client base. So I'm going to be sharing it with them. It's not a sponsored video. So anyone watching this, if I'm going to be asking questions that I think you will all have. But yeah, it's not sponsored. Do your own research. I have to ask about this car business. I know it's not talking about Business Score. Is there actually a market for that? Why? What is this? Go and buy used cars and sell them?
Market. It's an amazing market. So what it is that I think this is I think part of the quirks of, I guess, kind of the Commonwealth, is that in many parts of the world there's a history of kind of British goods, and I guess you see it. It's slightly unrelated. I guess you see in China where they love luxury products. They love Burberry and stuff. Well, and what we found in the African continent and particularly where I'm from in Uganda is that they love Land Rovers because they always used to see Land Rovers. The Kings had Land Rovers. They know that the Queen drives Land Rovers here in the UK and everything. And so there's a real love for British made goods, and there's a perception that they are really high quality. And so I used to literally buy secondhand Land Rovers here and then ship them over and sell them to people on the ground. And obviously, those cars, a lot of them are really good because of the terrain, that they can deal with the terrain.
Yeah.
But they all aesthetically as well, they're really beautiful vehicles. So I had a bit of fun driving around here and in Uganda as well. So there was definitely some perks to it. Yeah.
What sort of, if you don't mind me asking, sort of profit margin be on that? Because would it not make more sense for them to buy them directly with Land Rover? Is the customer in your case actually saving, or were they saving a substantial amount of money still? Is it just that there was no connection for them to buy a second-hand car? Is it easier for them to do that now with the internet?
So I think what it was, I guess what made it easier is that if you go for a dealership, a bit like in the UK, if you go to a dealership, you're typically going to be charged like a premium because someone's got to pay for the dealership and obviously the royalties they pay to the brand they're representing. And so what I was doing, I was finding secondhand cars here in the UK, and then using like another, I guess, kind of like online business called Click Mechanic, because I'm not necessarily like the best person with cars, and I'm like, I did this mechanic. So I'd use a company called Click Mechanic to go and check out the car and do like a thorough, literally I think like a 250 point check on the car to make sure.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Because the worst thing is someone spends a lot of money in the car, you send them like a dud. So I'd actually another company called Click Mechanic, who I really recommend, totally unrelated, but if you are looking to buy a car and you're not an engineer, just send Click Mechanic, because they find a local engineer to go check out the car on your behalf.
That's a really cool idea, actually. I didn't.
Yeah, and I think it's literally do it for as little as like 100 quid. So obviously, if you're going to pay a few grand for a car, it's definitely a worthwhile investment. So that's what I'd use then, do the initial check on the car, and when the car came out with all tits and a good deal, then I can have it as part of my portfolio, which I then start to shop and kind of display online for people to request interest. So yeah, that was a process. But in terms of the margins, just to give you an idea, people would literally pay. First of all, the tax that they have to pay is basically 100%. So on the cost of the car that's being sent over, they basically are 100% of the price in tax alone. Wow. So that's like the first. That's to give you a first idea of how the tax. So then I put a little bit of a margin in there, so maybe paying like 130% of the price I'd pay here in total. So there was a massive market. Things have changed like slightly now, like as things always do, like taxes on the ground. But yeah, I mean, it's a massive opportunity, and I think it's because the perception of Land Rover in particular that was really strong. So people were willing to pay like a premium for it.
I guess it helps put into perspective, like when you talk about that 100% kind of tax or duties that come in, like all the things that they're kind of arguing about with the Brexit EU trade deal. Like actually, if they're saying, well, we're going to add 100% tariff potentially on cars that come in from Germany, like that's actually quite a big deal, isn't it? Like it's
definitely,
it's going to cause Going back to business score, so you, or even with your old business, is it still going, your car business?
That's a Statesman's car. It's called Statesman Cars. So it's had to take a bit of a break. Talk about backseat as I've got focusing on business score. But I still get requests every now and again for like particular car parts. So I still do maybe like car parts, maybe a couple of times a month, like every other month, there's a couple of car parts out there.
That's cool.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of on the back burner. I kind of outsourced it to my little brother now. So,
You said that this business score kind of its genesis story came through that. How did Statesman Cars? How did it solve its problem at the time? Like, did you manage to get the funding that you needed?
So I went into my savings. That was my thing. Went into my savings, and ultimately, it's why I kind of closed it down as well, because the cash flow challenge was just too strong. So I guess I'm kind of a victim of like the circumstance. Well, to some extent, the circumstance that if you can't get a decent amount of capital up front, then it's really hard to reinvest and purchase. Have like a large capital outlay and invest in the stock.
Cool. Well, I know I said to you before starting the call that I was going to try and avoid too many product-specific questions. I feel like some people will want to know the answer to these. So imagine if I guess the question would be, what sort of e-commerce businesses do you lend to? Do you lend to startups, or are they kind of a no-no? Is it just established businesses?
Yeah, so it really depends on the e-commerce's like needs, what their needs are. So what we found is that there's probably about 200 different types of funding possible for a business, and we were like, that is way too confusing. And so what we've done, we've simplified it down to 6 that are relevant for e-commerce businesses. So depending on the different scenario, there's different funding available. So some options we have, so for example, maybe you had like a really big deal with, I don't know, maybe like John Lewis. We're able to give you a type of finance called invoice financing, which will then basically give you money up front once they've placed the invoice with you and you've delivered the goods. So that could help you with cash flow in case you need to, need to put more money into purchasing more stock. So we're able to work with companies from day zero, but typically speaking, the rule of thumb is if the types of funding that are available, you do need to have some kind of product, you do need to make it some kind of sales.
Right. Okay.
It's not possible when you're kind of, I guess, at ground zero. You need to have like some kind of product in market for the lenders that we work with.
And you mentioned John Lewis, so they're obviously, like John Lewis and similar, are big retailers, and they would be, if you're an e-commerce business dealing with those, you're probably going to be you're going to have an established brand and product. Most people, especially that we work with, are Amazon sellers, they're drop shippers, or they're starting a brand completely from scratch and actually haven't, for whatever reason, managed to get their foot in the door with any of those big kind of players. Would you, do you still work with those sort of guys or guys and girls that are drop shippers, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this really depends on the.
Yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, and someone's like, "Oh, you said that you would," but just out of interest, like if you're a specialist e-commerce lender or that you facilitate that, I would imagine those are the sort of questions you get, right?
Yeah, so I think because of our process, we're very kind of human centric. We actually want to know the business and understand what the situation is. It just really depends on their context, and we get a range of business. We get quite a few D2C brands. We get quite a few Amazon sellers. Obviously, like Shopify brands as well. So it really does vary. We also get quite a few like marketplaces. So people who own like websites but don't necessarily kind of resell other products as well. So it really varies. But I guess in terms of answering the question at what stage, typically it's like once you have a product in market, then we can start to like different options start to open up as you progress.
Yeah. And what sort of things can they borrow for? Is it if they want to invest in more products and grow, like, I suppose, like working capital? If they want to move office like that, or actually move into an office?
Yeah, so different scenarios. So the most common thing today we get is stock. Stock's a big one, especially with time lag and what you want to spend all the Christmas and New Year. Secondly, marketing, especially with like Black Friday and Christmas. A lot of brands, this is their boom time. And so many of them need funding now that they can use to pay on ads. And then obviously they'll reap the reward over the next 6 weeks or so. So quite a lot of requests there. We've also had some requests, because people want to bring on like new staff members, and want to kind of get more people to kind of come on board. Earlier today, we've got a brand that's looking for equity investment. So they've gone from almost like a standard start to like 5 figures in the space of like 6 months, and so now they're looking to bring on like potentially like more equity investors. So it really does vary. It really does vary, the different scenarios. But I mean, if you talk to us, there's always normally that one option that we can potentially like suggest might be most appropriate now. And even if you're not ready for it now, we can let you know kind of what bar you need to get to, what milestone you need to hit in order to be able to qualify for it. But I'd say the main thing is because we're not kind of tied to any one lender, we have a whole panel. What it means is there's always like a best case option, a worst case option, and everything in between. So we can always kind of explain like what the landscape looks like and who might be the best fit for you once you hit a certain threshold.
That's pretty cool that you also have equity investing, because that's not usually something that if someone went to a bank that they would necessarily be able to get, unless I suppose it was like JP Morgan or something like that. If that person wanted equity investment, are you ever tempted to get involved? Are you allowed to get involved as the CEO and founder?
I tell you, there's some really, really cool brands that I'm not sure how much money I've got. I might have to ask my partner whether I'm allowed to kind of break my piggy bank. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some brands that I personally love to invest in. But again, I mean, the way that we're operating is that we're building out. So we really have some relationships with really great investors, that we speak to on a regular basis. So one of them, for example, is Jam Jar, which is the fund which was set up by the Innocence movie founders.
Oh wow!
And so we have some amazing funds that we're in relationships with. However, the key thing for us is really to give the e-commerce business we work with the information they need in order to be able to access investors. And like we definitely can't guarantee that what these investors are going to invest into them. But what we're building now, and I guess the vision for Business Score is that if you are if you're an e-commerce business and you connect to the Business Score, what we'll be able to do is inform you when investors in our network are keen to speak to you. So at least you have some transparency, so that because when the investors, they have certain thresholds or certain like milestones they're keen to be flagged up, because none of them wants to miss the next gym shark, right? And so what we're able to do with our platform, we can, if you were to have like a really strong month and grow like 20%, for like 5 months, we can flag that to investors and say, hey, by the way, and we do it anonymously, so we'd say something along the lines of, hey, there's a shoe brand that's on Amazon and Shopify. They've grown 20% month to month. Would you like an introduction? Would you like to speak to them? And then facilitate it that way. So you as an entrepreneur can really focus on building your business rather than spending months on end trying to chase equity investors who can be very like hard to track down and to pin down. So we're just really trying to make funding a lot faster. That's what we're trying to optimize for. So yeah.
That's cool. And you mentioned like that it's a platform, and even there that you're potentially connected into people's Shopify and Amazon. Is that right? Like, do you actually connect to their Shopify store in the background and just sit and run, or is that something that's in the pipeline with you guys?
So we actually launched it. So last week we actually launched the platforms to the integration of that platform. So we have Shopify, we have like WooCommerce. We don't actually have Amazon just yet. That's integration we're working on. But we have Stripe, etc. So we have like a decent spread in like Google Analytics. And so what we're also keen to do as well is kind of empower entrepreneurs with information on what metrics are important to investors and important to lenders. Because very often it's just hard to know what do investors really care about. And the honest truth is it's a mixed bag. But there are some baseline numbers. So for example, like customer acquisition costs, lifetime value, monthly growth, and obviously and also reoccurring subscribers or just kind of repeat buyers, which they do care about. And so what we're able to do is calculate those numbers for you automatically and let you know what they are. And because we've got obviously good relationship with our investors, when we tell them, hey, this company has done X, they trust us. So that, okay, cool, this is worth me potentially having a conversation with them, because Business Score has verified that they have actually achieved this, got to this threshold. So we are able to kind of produce that information on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, it's a really cool idea. And I feel like if you're doing it and if you have all that stuff built out, it's almost, I imagine, in real time for the investors, so they can sit there and be like, oh, wow, it's not something that an accountant has cooked up 6 months ago. Like, has something changed in the last 6 months? Is that I'm literally plugged into the feed. That's really sounds really powerful.
No, thanks. And this is also where funding is going, and where Business Score is taking funding, is that, and probably in about 5 years' time, is that funding will be instant. And that's really what we're working towards. So that, and you tap on you point out a really important thing, that it is instant, that it is real time. And when it's verified by an independent body like Business Score, what it means is not just the investors, but also the lenders can also see that and know that, oh, if Business Score has verified this business has done really well this month, they should qualify for more funding to maybe put some more fuel on the fire, so they can improve their marketing, grow their marketing, and get even more sales. Rather than, the archaic way is the lenders will look at what filed accounts you submitted like 9 months ago and then make a judgment based on that. But as you know, in e-commerce, things can change literally on a daily basis. What's an influencer tweets you, and all of a sudden you've got all these people coming for your stock. You need the money to get more stock right now, not in like another 5 months once you filed your accounts. And so that's the future which we're building, and we are. And there's I think people are starting to see. We were the first to really say, especially here in the UK, that actually every business should be able to get some funding instantly. And I think slowly but surely the world is coming. The more conversation I have with lenders, the more they're coming around to it. But it is a process, and it does take long. But I think the world is coming around to it now.
Now, to slightly segue, you've built a platform that helps facilitate funding, essentially, but your platform and your business actually needed funding itself. Is that right?
Yeah.
What was that? I know you've worked with, I think, especially from the website, 3 VC funds have backed you. I guess firstly, for anyone who's completely new to this, would you be able to kind of explain what venture capital is, and then also like what was that process like? Because I'm from friends who have done it. Like I've got a friend who, as I told you before, who's also done Y Combinator, and it seems like quite an experience.
Yeah, it is. It is literally the most like I think crazy thing ever. So a bit of background and context for listeners that are newer to this. So like venture capital is where you go and get yourself equity investors, but it's meant for companies or startups. It's more later stage. It's more for companies that are.
And I guess someone might not even know what equity investors are. Sorry to like really
boil
it down, but you've got to think because some people won't have a clue.
Yeah, totally. Let's break it down. So equity investment is where you give a piece of your company, so maybe 10% of the company, to an investor, and then they give you money in exchange for it. And the way the technical way it works is that they value your company and they give you money. But the valuation isn't technically today. The valuation is more like, I'm going to give you this money for you to make the company worth that valuation that we're saying it is today.
Yeah.
And that's the way to think about it. So we were really lucky to raise equity investment. So we I applied to only with an idea and a vision of what it was.
Sorry to cut you off. Are you at liberty to say how much percentage you gave away? Is that, or do you feel don't worry if you?
Yeah. So it's a little bit complicated for us because we raised on a so our valuation and to the actual equity isn't actually fixed. It depends on our next valuation. So we raised on something called a Y Combinator safe. So because we're so early stage, it takes away the whole issue of trying to value your company precisely. So when they do the next fundraise, then it'll be a fixed valuation. So that was probably one thing which I'm really glad about because it takes you away from this whole challenge.
And I imagine it'd be quite scary though to be giving away a large portion. But sorry, I'm getting sidetracked.
not at all. We raised just under $2 million. Wow. So I can give you that number. So we participated in a program called Y Combinator, and Y Combinator is a 10-week program for startups to basically grow. So you go there and every week they give you like a talk from like the legends of like who other people who've done Y Combinator. So to give some examples, like the first day, the session was led by the co-founder of Airbnb, because Airbnb did Y Combinator back in the day. So did Stripe. So the Stripe, guys, they come and do a talk as well. Even Monzo got funded by Y Combinator. So did Go Cardless. So a lot of the big brands that we know today did Y Combinator. Even Reddit did Y Combinator back in the day as well. So we were obviously really lucky to be one of the few UK companies selected to take part in it last summer. And it's an amazing experience. Like, it's really intense. I mean, it's probably the most intense 10 weeks of my life that I've ever had, just really focused on trying to build a company, really trying to move things forward. And we were really lucky. And I think, although we're at idea stage, I think YC really resonated with the vision that I had for the future of funding, particularly for businesses, and really, leveraging like the online data that we have through the sales and making it real time. And so we also were one of the few companies that got a personal investment from the founder of Y Combinator, Paul Graham. So we're also really lucky to have him on board as well. So we have quite a few investors. So we have Y Combinator on board. We also have Local Global on board, which are Local Global, probably like the leading investors in Europe. We also have we have quite a few investors. We also, one cool angel investor we have is was the first engineer at Dropbox. So the first hire at Dropbox is one of our angel investors.
Wow, cool.
So we're really lucky to have some pretty cool investors. But at the end of the day, like, you can have you can have a lot of money for your startup, but it doesn't change the fact you've got to make a product users want. And so for us, it's really cool to get all this funding. We haven't actually done a public announcement about the funding, because for me, it's like, So
Yeah.
what, you need to really focus on fundamentals. So for me, it's really been about kind of head down and making sure we build out a platform and a service that really helps e-commerce businesses. And then once we get that going and it's doing really well, then then we may do a bit more like in the public eye. But so far, it's been like relatively just heads down.
And do those funders, like you mentioned, the guy from Dropbox, do they actually give you any other help aside from money, or is it just a case of here's some money, great idea, get on with it?
Yeah, so it's actually really hard to even to fundraise. So you definitely do a lot of convincing, and they also do provide a lot of advice. I mean, when you reach out, they respond.
Yeah.
They give you time. So yeah, so I think the advice part of it is really important, and I think it's also something that if you as an entrepreneur you're considering getting an angel investment or whatever equity you may be giving up, it's important to try and obviously go for what you call quote unquote smart money. So individuals that will give you the advice, individuals that will be patient with you, individuals that will will be there for you as an entrepreneur, because it is hard.
Yeah.
And I think one of the myths about entrepreneurship is that if you've got money, it makes it easier. No way, it makes it a bit easier, but it's still really tough. So I'm going through many of the challenges that I'm sure you go through yourself. Most days are tough. There's more days when you're like, what the hell am I doing this, than days you're like, oh, it's all working. And so having investors there that understand that and are there for you for the journey is essential. So I was really quite careful when I was kind of working out which investors I would really try and pursue, and so far it's worked out pretty okay.
It seems like a pretty amazing deal, to be honest. Not only do these people give you money, but they're also giving you their time. Like usually you'd have to, if you want to get like a really good developer to work with you, you've got to pay them. But in this case, you've got the guy from Dropbox paying you, or like giving you, and also then he's like got skin in the game, so he's got to protect it by helping you. It's quite handy.
Yeah, no, it is true. And yeah, I feel very privileged and very fortunate that situation we're in. But I mean, at the same time, still pressure. Right? Still got to deliver, and you want to make sure that people invest into you, they believe in you, really want to.
How frequently do you have to update the investors? Is it quarterly, yearly? Do they just leave it alone?
Yeah. So what's interesting? So it really varies from company to company. So there isn't necessarily how often you have to. We're fortunate that in our terms, like there's no rules or anything. But I like to update them. I try to do it at least on a monthly basis. Is the cadence you want to go for. But some businesses do it on a quarterly basis. Some businesses do it on like every 2 months or so. But I think it can vary depending on what stage of the business you're in. I think when you're in this period where you're still figuring things out, less frequently is probably okay. But when you're kind of rolling, kind of got somewhere, then you probably want to do it. And also at the end of the day, you're doing it for yourself, right? You're letting them know what's going on so they can help you, and they can come down and make sure you're on track. So I think it's it varies, but we do about this month.
Oh, cool. Going back to the process of Y Combinator, did you just go there with only an idea, or did you already have something kind of built out? And you also mentioned that not many people from the UK kind of get accepted. Do you know roughly how many people apply to go to Y Combinator? And even if you get there, are you guaranteed funding? And I appreciate that's a barrage of questions, but
so I think the official numbers are I think it's about I don't think they publish the official. I don't think they actually publish the number. I think it's about 5 figures of people around the world apply for each cycle. So 5 figures. And in my batch, they had quite a lot of companies in my batch, but in my batch had about 100 companies from around the world.
Yeah.
And then maybe about 6 were from the UK.
And that's the batch that got to the 10-week program.
Yeah.
And when you're there, is it guaranteed that they'll give you $2 million or dollars, sorry, at the end of it? Or is it kind of, like an apprentice style kind of thing where you go there and you do 10 weeks of...
Yeah. So the way it works is when you get into a 10-week program, YC give you $150,000, so about 100 grand, 120 grand. And then it's up to, then you have to fundraise off the back of that. So so anything I've got above that, the 1.75 mil, I had to go fundraise for that. So
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. And do you...
It's not guaranteed, no. It's still hard. It's still really hard to fundraise.
And it was in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, we're out in San Francisco. Yeah.
And are you planning on going back? Do you get to go back each year, or?
You can actually. So funny enough, they do actually have like what they call like they have like quite a few like kind of reunion events.
Yeah.
They host like each year. Obviously with COVID, that's kind of like derailed quite a lot of plans. However, nowadays they do things online. So when we have like, so there's a special ex-founders demo day. So all the alumni of Y Combinator can come and see the companies as they, before everyone else does. So if you happen to kind of have a few $1 million or $100,000, 100,000 quid, spare, you can invest in some of the next Airbnbs. So yeah, but I don't. I mean, because of COVID, I haven't gone back. But it's cool. It's a cool place to be, and obviously, it's a great community off the back of it as well.
Yeah, I imagine that, and hopefully one day you get to go back and be one of the speakers in the 10-week program. People will be like, yeah, it's called the business score. Rich gave me.
You never know. We'll see.
Yeah, I forgot to ask at the beginning. How long's it been going for?
Yeah.
Your business, obviously.
So the idea came about like last March, and then did like Combinator last summer. So I guess it's pretty much been like a year and a half now, like a year and a half of like kind of building. But obviously even within that, like meandering and figuring out, questions like, do we start in the US? Do we start in the UK? Like, how do we make this more effective? Do we move more towards like the lender side to make sure they know what to do, or do we move towards the business side? So spend a lot of time really like figuring and like really deep diving to understand where do we fit within this ecosystem of helping businesses access funding. And I think where we are at the moment seems to be the right fit. But even within that, I think it will evolve as we get more feedback from our users, like over the next couple of years or so, how exactly other ways we can help them.
Now, you say that you've worked with over 300 e-commerce businesses. Have they all been e-commerce, or are some of them kind of regular? I'm trying to think, like vanilla businesses, like non-e-commerce.
So all e-commerce, yeah. So all e-commerce, yeah. So we are, and it's quite hard actually as well, because we do have some businesses that come across us who don't fit our criteria, who are just like kind of like traditional, like offline, and we're like we just don't serve them, and it's hard. But I think as a principle, if you can be focused on who you're trying to serve, then you'll make a better product, and so that's kind of been the approach we've taken. I think we're also lucky in the sense that quite a lot of offline businesses have gone online. So that's also obviously been a massive trend over the past year. But yeah, we're pure e-commerce, pure on business that sell products online. You
mentioned that a lot of people, you've got your integration for Shopify, and you briefly mentioned WooCommerce and Amazon. What are those the main platforms that you see people sell on, or are there any kind of new up and coming ones that you've kind of seen in the pipeline?
Yeah, it's always an interesting one. I'd say probably about like 80% of the businesses we find are like on those three platforms. But I think there's, especially what we tend to see is that when it comes to new platforms, they typically start in the US and then they spread over to the UK. So there are some newer platforms that are being built and people are testing out in the US, but we haven't really seen the adoption here in the UK at the moment. I'd probably say Shopify is what we're finding is like the number one for new starters, if they're not kind of pure Amazon sellers. And obviously Amazon has some benefits, but we'd probably say Shopify is the most popular platform we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah. Have you seen much growth? And I suppose, given that it's November 2020, we've had this crazy 2020 year of the coronavirus. Have you seen much growth in e-commerce over the recent years? Or this year?
Yes, I mean, the tricky thing for us, right, is that we haven't been going for years and years, so we can't really compare it year on year. But I'd say what's really inspired me has been just the number of businesses that we've helped who literally were doing maybe like, hundreds of pounds, like at the back end of last year, and now we're doing like 5 figures, some 6 figures. It's absolutely insane. And I think for me, it really, what we're finding is those businesses find it hard to access more funding where they need it. And it really validates why we exist, because if you haven't been around for like a year or longer to file your account, you can't access a lot of funding. And so that's probably been a remarkable thing for us. So it's like because we can't really tell, did these business, whether there's many e-commerce business last year. We know there wasn't. We know we've definitely had more now. But the thing for us has just been like the crazy growth in a short amount of time for a lot of brands.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about coronavirus, we've had that kind of government grant that I spoke about very briefly at the beginning. You've got the bounce back loans and CBILS. One of the reasons we kind of met each other was because one of the products you kind of offer is that you have this, I think, a facility to change a bounce back loan to a CBILS loan. How does that work, and what sort of criteria are there on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is part of like the government package of support off the back of coronavirus to obviously create more jobs and support businesses to grow here in the UK. So one of the things they did, so they have two main products. One is the bounce back loan, as you described, and that's up to £50,000. And it's typically for businesses that have a turnover of 200k. So because what the government stipulates is that you can get a government support of up to 25% of your turnover. So if your turnover is 200k, 25% is 50k. But then if you're a business that wants, that's much bigger than that, maybe doing 300, 400, 500, maybe even £1 million of turnover a year, then you're able to access what's called the CBILS. So the way we describe the CBILS is it's like the big sister of the bounce back loan. And then the CBILS is there to support businesses that have our turnovers of 200 grand like upwards, and it's a larger facility. The only caveat for the CBILS is that it's actually quite hard to access. The lenders have quite a lot of different criteria, and so what lenders typically prefer, and they get best success rate, is if you work with a broker, so an intermediary, so like business score, in order to be able to get your books in order, make sure everything's all right, help you liaise with your accountant, help you to get all the different statements that you need, and also help you just kind of complete the form as well. And they prefer it because otherwise they'd have to be doing that work themselves. And so it's for them, it's like, they can have a broker kind of take a few hours and lots of emails back and forth to deal with the application, and the lenders, it saves them that all that time they would have spent. And so that's what we've been supporting businesses with as well, is the CBILS.
And so if people want to convert their bounce back loan into a CBILS, they need to have a turnover of above 250k, did you say?
So above 200k. So 200k is the cap for, because a quarter of 200k is 50k. So that's a bounce back loan. Mm-hmm. So if your turnover is over 200k, then you could upgrade it to a CBILS. And so the way that it works is that when you get a CBILS processed, so done through Business Score and one of our lender partners, what you then have to do is take some of that money. So however much you want to bounce back loan, you have to take your CBILS and pay off your bounce back loan. So once you get a CBILS, you have to pay off your bounce back loan.
Yeah. So if you got a CBILS for 100k and your bounce back was for 50, you'd get the 100k but have to take 50, and you don't get both.
So it'd be net 50k on it.
So just give you the extra 50.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the great thing about the CBILS is that, just like a bounce back loan, it's interest free for a year. So what we find in a lot of businesses, they're kind of using that as like a buffer. So if they do need to use the funding, to grow, or they can do that. And I think it's brilliant because ultimately what it's helping do is, fundamentally create more jobs here in the UK, and obviously get things rolling. So yeah.
And is there, I guess two things. One, is there a deadline? Because I feel like actually it's coming up, right?
Yeah, so what's been quite hectic with the government and our mate Rishi there is that the Treasury have kept on extending the CBILS. So the previous deadline was the end of October, then it got pushed back to the end of November. It's now the end of February, so end of January, so basically February. So if you are thinking about getting if you are thinking about upgrading your bounce back loan to CBILS, I highly recommend you get in touch and start get the ball rolling.
And final question on it, just because I know a lot of people will be interested in that, especially people that we work with. What do they need to kind of have in order before applying for this? Do they need their accounts to be filed? Do they need a certain number of years to be filed? What do they need to come to you with to make your life easier?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there is a list, and because with the CBILS and the bounce back loan, because the CBILS and bounce back loan are government supported, I guess like funding, and the CBILS is provided typically by the more traditional lenders. So think of your your Barclays, your HSBC, etc. of the world. So what you do need is to have your last year's filed accounts. So whatever you've last filed on your filed account. So if you filed, last filed account said, 400K, that is the number that they'll use to kind of assess how much you can borrow.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't necessarily a fixed figure, but that's kind of like roughly speaking what you use to borrow to understand how much you can borrow. So if your turnover, say, argument's sake, was 400K, then you'd be able to borrow a quarter of that, which would be 100K. So that's to give you like a rough idea. So you need that. You also need to have like 12 months bank statements. So if you submit it now, we'd want to have from October all the way back to last year, November.
Would that be PDF bank statements?
Yeah, exactly. PDF bank statements. And then another thing which we're also doing with the business we're working with, we're also asking you to provide a statement of your WorldPay, whatever international account you're using to catch other currencies. And so this is one thing that we've realized, because we had quite a few e-commerce businesses coming to us who'd gone to other brokers and weren't necessarily, or had gone direct, weren't necessarily getting success. And then came to us, and we've had one or two have now gone through. And I think the key difference which we've realized, to explain to the lenders, is that an e-commerce business doesn't have all of their money on their UK bank account. And so what we've now do is, like, when they ask for accounts, we basically submit both. And what we find is that is definitely like having better outcomes, because very often, if you just put yourself in the shoes of the lender, they typically have underwriters, inside to receive all the documents. Then they have like on their computer like a tick box exercise where they've got to tick. Yes, this business has shown on their statements that I can see they've got over X amount of revenue. And if you're an e-commerce business and only have, maybe just turned over 400K, but only, a quarter of that is in pounds, then they see your turnover was 100K based on your bank statements. And so that's often where you get like a straight decline, because once they do the initial tick box, they then have to press submit, and it's either decline or progress.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We've been intervening there. Yeah.
I guess the other big thing as well, thinking about it, is that places like Amazon, they deduct their fees before you get paid the money into your bank account. So not only is it potentially USD that's coming in, it's Amazon, like your sales should actually be this big, but Amazon are taking this much, VAT is taking that much, and then it's in dollars. And so it comes down to that much. And I'm guessing you guys kind of consider that with your process.
Exactly. So you can also get Amazon statements. And I think Amazon payout statements. And I think what we're really trying to move to is, and why I think, us building out like the tech platform is important, is if we have that connection, we're then able to make it a lot more seamless, so we can initially say, okay, this is how much the business should, has actually made in that period. And obviously, because we're in relation with the lenders, we can vouch, be like, we know how they're doing, listen to us.
Yeah.
So that's also something that we're I guess the reason why we're keen to make things a lot more streamlined and automated.
Cool. Well, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Rich. I'm very conscious that we've kind of approached that hour mark, and I'm mindful of your time. I know you said that you wanted to have your soup with.
I think it's cold now. My soup.
Sorry, that's my fault.
It's all good.
Is there any imparting wisdom that you want to leave any e-commerce business owners that are watching this?
Yeah.
Putting you on the spot there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a couple reflections. Like some of the e-commerce businesses we work with today, like I've seen them or known of them for like over a decade, some of them. And I think just remember that everything compounds, like things compound, sales compound. And like, as we know, like the overnight success typically takes about 10 years, So I think just remember that as you're starting out, and maybe you don't necessarily qualify for funding, maybe you can't get that angel investor to get back to you. I think just remember that things do compound, and everyone that's created a great business has got tons of rejections and continues to do so. Even when things move down the road.
Yeah.
And yeah, just remember that it's the process to enjoy, and it's the journey. So yeah, that's my little bit. Yeah, my little bit.
Very wise man. Thank you, Rich. And if people want to find out more about you or Business Score, what's the best thing they should do?
Yeah, so you can either basically drop me an email. I'll also leave my number as well. So Joe, if anyone wants to just like drop me a WhatsApp or a call, I'm here to take it. And yeah, our website's called thebusiness.com. We've got some information on there, so you can look at the different types of funding available. But also, if you just want to have a chat, come and have a chat with us, because we're here to like kind of help you. Even if things aren't suitable today, we're also here to let you know what you may qualify for in the future, and also make sure that you're setting things up later on for the future as well. So yeah, we're here to help, and yeah, keep going. It's going to be a very busy Christmas, hopefully for you, everyone watching, and yeah, look forward to seeing you on the other side.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, amazing. Thank you so much, Rich. And yeah, I'll put all the links to everything in the notes below. Thanks again for your time, and speak soon.
Cheers, Joe.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye, Rich.
Bye.
And that's it. That's the end of today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed speaking with Rich about Business Score. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I'll be releasing new updates and e-commerce related video content as we go. Thanks a lot. See you soon.